Get some more on all of this. Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California is joining us. He's the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
You bet. Good to be with you.
You agree with the White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest that Donald Trump was, quote, obviously aware that Russia meddled in the U.S. presidential election in order to benefit his campaign?
Well, he was certainly aware that they were hacking into the institutions, and he was certainly aware of the benefit he was deriving from it. In fact, you'll remember that press conference he did where he said, hey, Russians, if you're listening, I hope you can find those 30,000 emails.
He says he was joking on that.
Well, he says that now, but frankly, I don't find that credible. He may say that he was joking about urging them, but he understood that the Russians were involved in hacking. He understood he was benefiting in it. It's very much a part of the president-elect's persona that you're either with him or you're against him, and the Russians were with him, and why on earth would he bite the hand that was feeding him? And that hand, unfortunately, came from the Kremlin.
Do you believe that Vladimir Putin did, in fact, sway this election?
Certainly the Russians and Putin had an impact on this election. Whether that was decisive, whether Director Comey's intervention was decisive, whenever you have a race as close as this, you can really point to almost any factor as potentially conclusive. We'll never know is the reality, but it shouldn't matter in the sense that we ought to take steps against Russia based on what they did. We ought to fight back, and we ought to publish and make the American people aware of what they did as a way of inoculating ourselves against further Russian meddling.
Do you think that members of the Electoral College, the electors, they're going to meet and formalize the election of Donald Trump on Monday? Some of them, a few dozen, now say they would like to be briefed by the intelligence community on Russian hacking, Russian involvement. Do you believe there should be an intelligence briefing for members of the Electoral College before they vote on Monday?
I don't have any objection to the electors being briefed. Obviously we would want to protect any sources and methods. I don't have an objection to the electors knowing about the conflict of issues that have been raised in terms of the president-elect and the emoluments clause. If they would like to know these things, I think they should be briefed. I don't, frankly, hold out much hope that it will have any impact on the results. I think we really need to look forward in terms of what kind of response we ought to take to these issues. And on the conflict of interest, I would hope that the president-elect himself would take action.
Are your Republican colleagues on the House Intelligence Committee taking this hack as seriously as you are? Are they taking it seriously at all?
Well, I think on a very bipartisan basis, the members of the Intelligence Committee take this very seriously. And I think to a person, we all understand that Russia was behind this. There's nobody on our committee who's been briefed that thinks the Chinese were involved or some 400-pound person. No, this was a state actor, and that state actor was Russia. So yes, they take it very seriously. They, I think, want to get to fully to the bottom of this. And I certainly, for my part, intend to press this investigation until we get all the answers, and to continue urging the administration to make as much public as they can, because it's really important for the American people to understand just what took place. And you'll remember, Wolf, I was making this argument before the election. And the one area I may take a difference with what you just heard from the President's press secretary is I think the administration should have said more before the election. I think the American people could have been trusted with that information. And yes, it may have opened the administration up to accusations that they were seeking to influence the outcome. But when you have a foreign adversarial power interfering in your election, you tell the American people about that. You take whatever shots come with being candid about that, but you tell the American people.
Did you express that view to the administration before the election?
I did, and you may recall Senator Feinstein and I made the rare announcement ourselves of what the intelligence was showing before the administration was willing to do so, and we did our best to keep the administration's feet to the fire. At the same time, what really made this effective was not the administration not saying enough, but the fact that one of the candidates, Donald Trump, effectively gave the Russians cover by denying that they were involved. You can imagine if that had been Mitt Romney or had been John McCain, and they were the beneficiary of Russian meddling, they would have been the first, even as candidates, to say, knock it off, I don't want this, I deplore it, I want nothing to do with the Russians and their hacking. They need to take that somewhere else.
The administration, the Director of National Intelligence, General Clapper, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, on October 7th, a month before the election, they did issue a public statement saying the U.S. intelligence community is confident that the Russian government directed the recent compromises of emails from U.S. persons and institutions, including from U.S. political organizations. They went on to say this could only have been done by Russia's senior-most officials giving authorization to do so. So they did issue that statement.
They did issue that statement, and I'm glad that they did. I think that statement should have been issued much earlier, and I don't think that statement should have been the last word either. I wanted to see and urged at the time the administration to engage in very open discussions with our European allies, who have also been the subject of Russian meddling, to impose sanctions on the Russians. That would have also said something about the seriousness with which we need to take kind of meddling. But again, the administration did go to the step you said. They did take some steps, but I fear they are not enough going forward to deter the Russians.
By the way, that statement, October 7th, 2016, was issued on the same day that Access Hollywood video, which was so embarrassing to Donald Trump, came out as well. That obviously got an enormous amount of publicity, a lot of coverage as a result of all of that. So where do you think all of this goes from here?
Well, we're certainly going to have investigations in the House and Senate, at least by the intelligence committees, maybe by other committees as well. What I have been urging is that we do a joint committee, much like we did after 9/11, so that we don't get separate information to one committee, then we get to another. But also because of the stature of this attack on the United States, the importance of this attack and our response, this ought to receive the high profile that a joint congressional investigation would bring.
And you raised this point. It's an important point. While everybody, the FBI, the intelligence community apparently, all agree that the Russians were responsible for hacking the DNC, do they also agree that they were responsible for hacking John Podesta's email?
You know, unfortunately, I can't go beyond what the Director of National Intelligence has said. So I'm cabined by that, and I can't make a further disclosure. That would be up to the administration.
But they disagree, apparently, on why, right? The FBI versus the CIA.
You know, that's not something I can comment on either. But there have been, obviously, public reports of disagreements among the agencies and different information being presented to House and Senate intelligence committees. It's one of the reasons why, just on the basis of public reports, I think there ought to be a joint investigation. All
right, stand by, Congressman. There's much more to discuss, including new information coming into the Situation Room right now about the Trump family and the role they are likely to play. There's some controversy brewing. We'll have much more right after this. Congressman Adam Schiff of California, the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. It was interesting today. The president-elect met with all these tech executives coming in, some very high-powered people. You see the pictures there of Ivanka, Eric, and Donald Trump Jr. As participating in that meeting as well. And we're also learning from our Sarah Murray that the First Lady's office, the traditional First Lady's office in the East Wing of the White House, will now become the first family office. Ivanka Trump will have an office presumably there. Her husband, Jared Kushner, will have an office in the West Wing. That's where the power is, in the White House. Do you have a problem with the adult children participating in these meetings, looking forward to after January 20th when he's sworn in as president?
Well, I certainly have a problem if they're going to continue to run the family business and they're also going to participate in meetings like this. It is a profound conflict of interest. And in fact, today, Elijah Cummings, our ranking member on the Government Reform Committee, hosted a hearing that I participated in on the emoluments clause on these conflicts of interest. And you can just look at any parts of the world, we've been talking about Russia, and see the potential conflicts. Just to take Turkey, for example, you have a situation in Turkey where when the Trump Towers were being named or erected, there was an agreement between the Trump family and the Erdogan government. When he proposed a Muslim ban, there was talk in the Erdogan government of taking the names off the buildings. When there was praise of the Erdogan regime by the president-elect, then as a candidate, then the talk of taking those names down went away. The conflicts are just tremendous, and they have to be dealt with. And the only way to really deal with them is for the president-elect to divest himself of his interest in the business. And if the kids are going to
divest, you mean sell everything?
I mean hire a reputable trustee with high moral standards to essentially sell off the businesses, put the assets, then liquid assets, in a blind trust. I think that's the only way.
And not allow the two adult sons to continue to operate the business, which Donald Trump has spent decades building up.
You know, certainly they can't be involved in the family business if they're going to have any role in advising.
What if they have no role? That Ivanka Trump will have a role, but she won't be part of the business. The two sons won't have any role in the West Wing or the East Wing for that matter, but they will be in charge of the business. You're
still going to have, I think, a profound conflict of interest, and I think it's most easy to understand when you consider whatever decisions the president goes on to make. If it's going to raise a question in the public, and is this being done because the son, the daughter, the son-in-law would stand to profit by it, then that's a problem.
He has already promised, the president-elect, that there'll be no new deals as long as he's president of the United States, that they're not going to try to expand. They're going to operate what already exists. Is that good enough?
Absolutely not. And that's equivalent of saying, I'm just going to keep the conflicts of interest I have now. I'm not going to generate new conflicts of interest. That doesn't work. And in fact, just the businesses that are, or deals that are in the pipeline are entirely problematic. His business has been negotiating leases in countries or expansion of development. Does that mean those projects can now go forward, be green-lighted? One of the witnesses at the hearing made a very important point, and that is, in other countries, we see the problem of what are called princelings. These are the sons of the ruling family, and the corruption gets funneled through the children. We don't want to have a problem like that here.
Congressman Schiff, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Wolf.